Welcome to This Explainer. Grab your investigative hats because today we are going to crack a massive historical and linguistic mystery. We're bypassing centuries of cultural folklore and diving straight into the internal discourse of the Quran. We want to find out what it actually says about human spirituality without all the historical baggage.
So let me ask you a question. Did Islam really begin in 7th century Arabia with an Arab prophet? Because, let's be real, that is the popular institutional narrative we've all heard. But when we treat the original text as a primary document and critically analyze its foundational vocabulary, well, a completely different, much more universal picture emerges. Let's challenge some deeply inherited assumptions using the text's own logic.
Here is our roadmap for today. We're covering the 7th century question, guidance before Arabia, redefining the divine signs, the anatomy of rejection, the shift to sectarianism, and finally, finding universal signs today.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the 7th century question, where we investigate origins beyond the usual historical religious narratives.
When you dig into the text, you find that it establishes the whole concept of guidance incredibly early, like right at the beginning. In verses 237 and 38, Adam receives words and guidance at the very dawn of humanity's story. This is huge because it proves that accountability to guidance existed long before the codified Arabic language or any modern sectarian religion was ever a thing. The text tells us humanity is judged on its response to universal guidance, or huda. Verse 239 specifically states, "But those who covered over and denied our ayat, those are the companions of the fire." Notice something missing. It doesn't mention failing to join a specific religion. It condemns covering up universal evidence. Since Adam obviously predates Arab ethnicity, this proves the framework is a continuous, pre-existing reality. It's not just some brand new Hijaz religion. Moving on to Section 2, Guidance Before Arabia. Let's trace this universal truth through human history. The text repeatedly projects this pattern of submission backward through time. Abraham, Noah, and the disciples of Jesus, they are all described as submitting long before Muhammad was even born. Across diverse global cultures throughout early antiquity, truth and submission were never monopolized by one specific era or ethnicity. It has always been about an existential alignment with reality. Now, this is absolutely crucial to understand. Arabic is simply a vehicle for truth. It is not the totality of truth itself. Historically, institutions have totally used linguistic barriers to gatekeep spiritual access. But the text explicitly states that every messenger communicated in the framework of their specific people. The Arabic Quran, it's just a local vehicle for a much larger universal reality. Let's explore that further in Section 3, Redefining the Divine Signs. What exactly are the ayats? Okay, putting our linguistic detective hats back on, we really need to look at the root definition here. An ayah is fundamentally a sign. It's an observable proof, a marker, or a manifest pointer toward truth. Now, humans love forming exclusive clubs, right? But reducing this grand concept merely to phonetic, written Arabic verses completely obscures its original existential meaning. Think about it. If Adam was judged on ayat, the word has to mean something way broader than just a physical book.
And it does. The text uses ayat to describe observable reality. We're talking about the ecological balance of a rainstorm, the mathematical precision in the cycles of night and day, human consciousness, and even the ruins of arrogant historical empires. The text views the entire universe as a living, communicative discourse. Reality itself is literally speaking to us.
The logical consistency here is just brilliant. Listen to verse 30-22. And among his ayat is the diversity of your tongues. If the sheer diversity of human languages is itself a divine sign, then there is absolutely no way a single human language can act as some sort of spiritual VIP club. Statements are signs because they point toward truth, not because the letters themselves are magically divine. We see this again in chapter 51, which says, "And in the earth are ayat, and within yourselves, do you not perceive?" The earth isn't composed of Arabic sentences, right? And human consciousness certainly isn't a ritual recitation. The text is deliberately directing our attention away from human-made religious institutions and pointing us directly toward observable existence and our own internal consciousness. Which brings us to Section 4, the anatomy of rejection. Let's understand what kafaru and kadhabu actually mean. The first word comes from the root kafaru, or kafaru. In its original linguistic sense, it means covering over, concealing, or just being flat-out ungrateful toward evident truth. It's not fundamentally about failing to join a specific religious club.
Rather, it is a deliberate psychological suppression of what someone knows in their core to be true. It's an active covering of the evidence. The second root is KDHB, or kavabu. This means actively falsifying, treating truth as false, or living your life entirely contrary to a recognized reality. Together, these two words describe a twofold process. First, you cover up the truth you already recognize, and second, you actively live a lie against it. Historically, this whole concept was heavily misread as passive disbelief, simply failing to join a 7th century institution. But the text emphasizes active resistance. Think about how often throughout history localized rituals and dogmas were used to obscure simple universal truths. We've seen it from ancient empires to modern institutions. The core conflict isn't about not having the right membership card, it's about humanity's active suppression of observable guidance. Now, Section 5, the shift to sectarianism. Let's look at universal realities versus localized traditions. Here is a really fascinating detail. The specific formula for rejecting signs appears exactly 7 times across the text. And incredibly, it is never, not even once, tied to rejecting a specific biological messenger or Arab culture. Historical narratives tend to prioritize profits because, frankly, personality veneration is way easier than taking personal accountability for universal signs. But the text constantly minimizes the personality and highlights the message. You can clearly see the historical drift here. The sectarian reading demands loyalty to a religious identity, ritual conformity, and personality worship. But the original Quranic emphasis? It demands a response to guidance, critical discernment, and accountability to observable signs. It's really a trans-historical description of human behavior, not some label for rejecting a later religious community. So how do we apply this? Let's go to Section 6, Finding Universal Signs Today, and Reconnecting with Existential Reality. Here are 4 practical steps for daily mindfulness pulled directly from the text itself. First, observe patterns and cycles in nature. They constantly communicate consequence. Second, reflect deeply on your own internal consciousness and moral compass. Third, assess the historical consequences of human behavior. And fourth, start replacing blind, inherited ritualistic habits with active, truth-seeking, daily awareness. I want you to consider this incredibly powerful reminder from verse 41:53. We will show them our ayat in the horizons and within themselves until it becomes clear to them that it is the truth. Truth isn't locked away in a 7th century manuscript. It is permanently embedded in existence itself, just waiting to be recognized by anyone willing to look. Which leaves us with this final thought. We've seen today that the text views the universe as a continuous living discourse. So if the universe is speaking through signs every single day, what truths are you currently refusing to acknowledge? Take that question with you today. Look at the horizons, look within yourselves, and never stop observing. Thank you for joining me on this explainer.